These are very dishonest people, many of them. They are very, very dishonest people.
Fake news, fake news. They are fake. They can make anything bad because they are the fake, disgusting news.
Those right there were just some of President Trump's attacks on the media over the past 4 months. Today in The Lid, the media responds to those attacks, with the Boston Globe taking the lead and asking editorial boards from papers across the country to address the assault on the free press. More than 400 news outlets in 49 states responded with editorials in support of that case. With us now is Linda Henry, the Boston Globe's managing director. The panel is also back. Casey Hunt, Susan Del Percio, and Aisha Moody Mills. Linda, do you think this is a good idea? Or why do you think it's a good idea?
I do. I think it's a good idea. I think that this is sort of an unprecedented increase in rhetoric against the media. And what this is doing is it's allowed media outlets to sort of galvanize them in their own words to explain why they matter. And the response was really terrific. And if you read them, there's just such a variety of voices in terms of, a lot of media outlets were connecting them to their community and saying, we're fellow Americans, we're your neighbors. It's not the other. The language that's being used is incredibly dehumanizing. To say the enemy of the people, it's these others, this otherness. And this was a chance to remind citizens of the function of the press that's often taken for granted.
But can you argue that isn't it better to remind voters and citizens the function of a free press is just being a free press and not making yourselves not a target, but not calling attention to the president's allegations of collusion by making it look like there's a coordinated effort to push back on him? Are you concerned about that?
Well, that's definitely something that we thought about it, but we have a choice, so we've been taking it. It's been coming. These attacks on this increased rhetoric and this dangerous rhetoric has been increasing. And we decided that we were going to respond and write about it and say that, there is a danger to this rhetoric. And we reached out and invited others to join us. And individual editorial boards made their own decision. And again, it was in their own words. And so the choice is, do we do nothing is one option, or to do something. And we chose to do something. Again, it is not an anti-Trump. It is a pro-Constitution, pro-First Amendment discussion, which should not be controversial.
What do you think about this?
I think that we as journalists go out of our way to make sure that there is a distinction between our editorial pages and our news pages. And the attacks that the president is leveling at the media are undermining the American public's faith in their ability to find information that is true. And that is at the root of the problem. So from that perspective, while I commend the effort that they're doing, that is not, I think, what we as reporters, we're not trying to argue they speak for us. So it is a delicate balance. And you saw the LA Times kind of give voice to that balance when they said, hey, we're not actually going to participate in this. But that said, this is also a role for the editorial boards of newspapers in our countries. They take stands on important issues all the time. And, the coordination here, I think, does speak to kind of the degree of concern.
We have that LA Times editorial. Let's read it. The president himself already treats the media as a cabal, enemies of the people. He has called us, suggesting over and over that we are in cahoots to do damage to the country. The idea of joining together to protest him seems almost to encourage that kind of conspiracy thinking by the president and his loyalists. Why give them the ammunition to scream about collusion? And then look at Trump's response today to all of this. He says the Boston Globe, which was sold to the failing New York Times for $1.3 billion plus $800 million in losses in investment, or $2.1 billion, was then sold by the Times for $1. Now the Globe is in collusion with other papers on free press. Prove it. I mean, I don't entirely understand that tweet, frankly, but I think the point is he's trying to say collusion.
The prove it is an interesting point, because it's not. Fake news is really new. What Donald Trump means by that is news that is unfavorable to him.
And we all know that.
But we don't say it enough. And I think if each editorial would have taken a story that they wrote, and Donald Trump at one point called some aspect of it fake news and said, this is not fake. This is real news that Donald Trump doesn't like.
Well, and I also
think
wish
that message can't get hammered in enough to the American public. We say it all the time.
Yeah, and I also wish that the news would do more to actually examine what are his motivations for attacking the press. First of all, fake news is not a new... Right, but let's be clear. Fake news is not a new term that Donald Trump made up. He is taking a direct play out of Hitler's book. Hitler came up with this idea of like, oh, fake news and attacking the media and using this propaganda to try to essentially give cover to his regime.
What's the German word for it again?
I don't speak German, so I don't even want to butcher it.
The German word for that.
I've certainly seen the pictures on Twitter that...
Oh, no, but I saw it on
it's a German
shirts. I saw it on
It's
shirts at
history.
Trump rallies.
And so I think the media,
Lugenpress.
So the media would really continue to do a service by constantly looking at the motivation of the president, talking about the history, the patterns that he has, and who he's taking his cues from. He thinks that he has a regime.
I think that's a more interesting way of doing it, putting it into context rather than I worry that these discussions about him attacking us end up being a little too navel-gazing and make the story too much about us. And when I consider doing one of these segments, I generally start to think of Marty Baron. When Marty Baron was responding to the president saying that he's at war with the press, Linda, Marty Baron said, and this is the editor-in-chief of the Washington Post, he said, "We're not at war, we're at work."
We are at work, and I think, I appreciate what the arguments are there. But again, this was what we are reiterating what it is that we stand for, what the value, what the role of a free press is. And each individual newspaper wrote about what that meant to them. And what a free press is in Boston is very different from what the free press is in Boise in terms of what the role that it plays within the community.
How so? Explain that. I'm confused by that.
So while we are all doing the same thing in terms of holding the powerful accountable, keeping the citizenry informed, but it means different things. It plays out differently on a community level. A lot of the editorials that you're reading were talking about how, we care about the school board. We care about the new restaurant that's opening. We're interested in who the city selectmen are, those sort of things on a very local level. And when the rhetoric comes in from the top that this is fake news, this is the enemy of the people, it plays down all through all levels of journalism.
Susan?
Well, I think the free press is the same in Boston as it is in Boise, as it is in Los Angeles, as it is in Florida and everywhere else. A free press means that you have the freedom to report, and the government is not there to oversee and prevent you from reporting. Those are values that kind of work everywhere.
It also means that we have access to our public officials and institutions. I cover the Capitol every day, so... when they try to say that we can't walk down X hallway or stand in Y corner, all of us kind of go up and say, hey, this is not acceptable. I mean, that's a fight that we have, on a daily basis.
Hey, excuse me, we pay for this building. And
well,
we should have access
but it's also,
to
people have a right to, they don't have access to their representatives.
Yeah.
We do. That's our job, and it's important to protect that.
Hello, YouTubers. If you're watching this, it means you've checked out our channel, so thank you. Now do me a favor, subscribe by clicking on that button down there. Click on any of the videos to watch the latest interviews and highlights from MTP Daily and MSNBC. You can get more Meet the Press content every morning in the First Read newsletter. If you're tired of content that you don't know anything about where it came from, you don't have to have that problem with us. NBC News, MSNBC, MTP, and the Meet the Press mindset right here for you on YouTube. Subscribe now.